Several months ago, or should I say a good several months ago, Nando V Movies issued a video challenge to channels far and wide to talk about their favourite Villainous Scene. Well, being as fashionably late to the party as I am, so late in fact that other guests have already gone home to their bed or passed out drunk in the puddle of their own vomit. But enough about my usual Friday nights. I discovered that I was utterly spoiled for choice, given my preferred subject. Now pay attention, 00 fans. Bond villains. Never before have there been a collection of megalomaniacs, mad scientists, assassins, corrupt businessmen, war criminals, terrorists, femme fatales, and midgets who have shown the dark, greedy, and morally corrupt side of humanity on the big screens. From satellite death rays to profiteering on human misery, these villains have proven to be some of the most deadly adversaries that the world has ever had the misfortune to face. However, thanks to the efforts of MI6's top agent James Bond and his allies within British intelligence, the United Kingdom has always been ready and able to avoid falling to these power-hungry maniacs. But what if along comes one villain more threatening than anyone MI6 has faced before? Someone who knows them, who's one of them, a villain that comes from the same place as Bond, a place that some say doesn't even exist. The Shadows. I am of course talking about one of Bond's most formidable opponents, possibly his equal in all things espionage, who can counter any move he makes and be one step ahead of him. I am talking of course of none other than Alec Trevelyan. Yes, I know people rant and rave about Mr. Silver and his awesome scene with Bond in Skyfall, but I want to talk about 006, and it's my video, and...
Oh, shut up!
Alec Trevelyan, a former intelligence operative of the 00 section, an ultra-covert unit within the Secret Intelligence Service, or MI6, under the code name 006. Trevelyan was born to a family of Lyon's Cossacks, a group of anti-Bolsheviks whom collaborated with the Germans during the Second World War that fled from the advance of the Red Army in Austria after surrendering to the British Army under the assumption that they would help them wage war against the Communists. However, the British decided to forcibly repatriate them and their families back to the Soviet Union, where unfortunately many of them were promptly executed by Stalin, and the few that weren't were sent to the gulags, including women and children. Although the Trevelyans managed to survive the ordeal, shortly after Alec was born, his father committed murder-suicide, unable to let himself or Alec's mother live with the shame of it, consequently leaving Alec an orphan. When he became an adult, Alec was eventually recruited by the British Secret Service as an agent, and over the years rose through the ranks to gain 00 status and the number 006. During this time, he became close friends with Bond, the two of them surviving numerous missions together. Although Trevelyan continued to harbour resentment towards the British for their perceived betrayal and began plotting his revenge. After faking his death at the hands of Soviet Colonel Arkady Arumov, Alec went underground and adopted the identity Janus, and formed the crime syndicate with the long-term goal of exacting his revenge upon Britain. From right after the end of the pre-title sequence, 9 years had passed since Alec's death, and Bond is trying to find his place and relevance again in an ever-changing world. The Cold War is now over. The age of spies and espionage that Bond thrived in is coming into question. He is being evaluated on whether he can even resume active service. There is a new M with an entirely different worldview to the 00. The world he once understood is rapidly changing. Are men like Bond even needed anymore? So this is what Bond is in conflict with throughout the rest of the film. This scene where Bond travels to Statue Park in St. Petersburg for his meeting with the mysterious Janus is the scene where Bond is forced to face this dilemma. Bond makes his way through the park in the dead of night, surrounded by statues of the Soviet Union, the symbols of a tyrannical and oppressive regime. Everything men like Bond stood against now lie in rubble, left in the dark and swept aside. But Bond is on high alert, gun drawn, ready at a moment's notice for danger, if any. The dangers and threats of the world Bond once knew are no more. the monuments of Stalin and Lenin act more like gravestones for the Red Menace. Every Soviet enemy that Bond has faced and eliminated, looking down at him, judging him like ghosts from the past. But then suddenly, something does emerge from the shadows. Not a ghost, but someone from his past who all rights should be.
Hello, James.
Brosnan's performance is amazing in this moment. The subtle expressions he goes through as Bean walks into view slowly are spot on. Confusion, disbelief, and realization, all as the music builds up the suspense. Did I forget to mention that the GoldenEye soundtrack is my absolute favourite out of the entire series? I did? Well, I'm telling you now.
What's the matter, James? No glib remark? No pithy comeback?
In only a few lines, Trevelyan completely disarms Bond. Never before has a villain been able to shake him on the spot and stir him into lowering his guard. See what I did there? You see? Yeah, right, okay. Both figuratively and literally.
Why? Hilarious question.
Oh, you can feel the betrayal behind that. Bond has indeed been stabbed in the back before. It kinda comes with the territory in espionage, I guess. And even though he is trained to expect it, it has never affected him like this before.
Did you ever ask why? Why we toppled all those dictators, undermined all those regimes? Only to come home. Well done, good job, but sorry, old boy. Everything you risked your life and limb for has changed.
This is the line that's at the very heart of this movie. Everything has changed. The Cold War is over, the big, bad, scary boogeyman is gone. The whole world has moved on, and both Bond and Trevelyan are left alone, surrounded by the decaying remains of the old world order, relics of the Cold War. Title drop.
It was the job we were chosen for.
Of course you'd say that. James Bond, Her Majesty's loyal terrier, defender of the so-called faith. Oh, please, James, put it away. It's insulting to think I haven't anticipated your every move.
Yes.
At this point, the audience realise just how much of a threat Trevelyan actually is. See, he possesses the one weapon, the one secret that no other Bond villain has ever had before.
I know you.
Yes, it's that simple. He has the same training as Bond, the same experience. He knows all the tricks of the trade, and above all else, he knows Bond personally. They were friends after all. He knew exactly how Bond would react normally in this situation. He knows how he would rationalize the accusations that Alec was challenging him with. He even knows about Bond's childhood and parents. This man knows more about Bond's past than any of the hardcore fans of the franchise knew up to this point. This is the first time we found out that Bond is an orphan, and how his parents died. The implications of that alone raises many questions for the audience. What trauma must have been inflicted on the young James? This goes to explain some of Bond's devil-may-care lifestyle choices. And while the audience is processing these bombshells, Alec goes on to reveal his own backstory, which leads to the most crucial revelation about his character that the audience pieced together. He is the anti-Bond, the darkest inflection of Bond's very character.
How did the MI6 screening miss that your parents were Leon's Cossacks?
Once again, your faith is misplaced. They knew.
Okay, for this point I'd like to refer back to a previous line in the film.
Governments change, the lies stay the same.
Also, a little brief history. Between the collapse of the Soviet Union and its reformation into the Federation, there was a political movement in Russia known as the Perestroika. It promised a lot of reforms on the political, economical, and social scales, but it ended up being just as corrupt as the previous regime. Now, Bond was of course remarking upon the Russian Federation, but that line could also apply in this moment. Alec is challenging Bond on the British government and its own lies. The British government betrayed Trevelyan's parents. MI6 knew about Trevelyan's background, but recruited him anyway. Could Bond be becoming disillusioned with his own government? Losing his belief in Queen and country? These are the doubts that Trevelyan feeds Bond and even the audience that he wrestles with for the rest of the entire film.
Hence, Janus. The two-faced Roman god come to life.
Okay, after a little digging, I came across something that I think shines a whole new light on this alias. Now, bear in mind my knowledge of Roman mythology amounts from a quick search on Wikipedia. This is still interesting. So Janus was a Roman god who was depicted having two faces, one being able to see into the past, while the other sees into the future. Now on a surface level this already fits with Trevelyan. He is revealed to be two-faced, meaning deceitful, false, and all sorts. Trevelyan wasn't the man Bond thought he was. He'd seen one face of Trevelyan, now he sees his other. And the little makeover Bond gave him years ago has given him literal two faces. But when I dug a little deeper, I came across this. Janus was also known as the god of change. He was worshipped at the beginning of the harvest and planting times, as well as marriages, deaths, and so forth. So he often represented the middle ground, frequently symbolized change and transitions, such as the progress of past to future, from one condition to another, from one vision to another, even the growth between youth to adulthood. Now, what has Bond been going through in this film? What I've brought up previously in this video, changing times, facing the end of one old era and the uncertainty of his place in the new one. See, the relationship between Bond and Trevelyan is what drives this whole film. Alec, as Janus, is helping Bond with his transitioning, reassuring him that men like Bond are still needed. There are still threats in this world for him to protect Britain against. And this is the scene that marks the beginning of Bond's transitioning for the rest of the entire film. I feel like I can explore this a bit deeper in another video, but for now, it's just something to think about.
Oh, by the way, I did think of asking you to join my little scheme, but somehow I knew 007's loyalty was always to the mission, never to his friend.
Like I said before, Bond and Alec's relationship drives this film from this scene onward, and Bond will be forced to make a choice. Does he betray his country or his friend? By the time the film reaches its climax and Bond is holding Alex's foot, that he ultimately makes up his mind. His country or his friend?
For England, James?
No. For me.
And the answer in the end was neither. Bond makes his motivation very clear. For him to find his place and indeed himself again, he needed to let go of the past, which also means letting go of his friend and once again finding his place in this new post-Cold War era. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. Also, check out the link for the One Villainous Scene playlist linked down below. And I'll see you Bond fans next time. Actually, wait, no, hold on. Just before I finish up, I just wanted to let you know why I wanted to make this video in the first place, nearly a whole year after Nando V Movie's challenge. You see, we've been living in some dark, uncertain, and hard times over the last few years, and with everything that's been happening recently in certain parts of the world, it's made me reflect on some things. I mean, with our world more connected than ever, I'm sure most of you watching, myself included, have made friends and even loved ones from all over the world. Now, I normally don't do this and I don't want to come across as preachy, so take this for what it's worth, but it's just something I wanted to get off my chest. I know things are tough right now, but don't let these crises, tragedies, or even politics tear us all apart from our friends and loved ones. Don't let someone who doesn't have your best interests in mind deceive you into believing that someone who is your friend should now be your enemy. Don't let these people divide us. It's funny, see what I've said and in this One Villainous Scene, it kind of reminds me of another scene from another favourite franchise of mine, which coincidentally also deals with the idea of changing times, yesterday's friends becoming tomorrow's enemies. So, you know what, I'm actually going to leave this video with a short snippet from it. It just seems, I don't know, appropriate. Take care, guys.
The foibles of politics and the march of time can turn friends into enemies just as easily as the wind changes. Ridiculous, isn't it? Yesterday's ally becomes today's opposition. And this Cold War? Think back. When I was leading the Cobras, America and Russia were fighting together. Now, consider whether America and Russia will still be enemies in the 21st century. Somehow I doubt it. Enemies change along with the times, the flow of the ages, and we soldiers are forced to play along. I didn't raise you and shape you into the man you are today just so we could face each other in battle. A soldier's skills aren't meant to be used to hurt friends. So then what is an enemy? Is there such a thing as an absolute timeless enemy? There is no such thing, and never has been. And the reason is that our enemies are human beings like us. They can only be our enemies in relative terms. The world must be made whole again.